Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Expert Talks. Today we have Isabel with us from Fertility Friends Foundation. Isabel, would you mind doing us the honor of an introduction, your name, and how you got started on this journey?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here with you and be able to share what the foundation does. So I'm Isabelle Lefebvre-Vary. I'm the executive director of Fertility Friends Foundation, and we are a Canadian registered charity that offers grants to cover expenses associated with fertility treatments, IVF, egg and sperm donation, and gestational surrogacy. The journey of it, we're quite new. We've been around for only 3 years, and we've been giving grants for only 3 years. And it all started when I met with Dr. Roumain and Dr. Dzineku. They are both fertility doctors, and they own a clinic in North York called Tripod Fertility. Every day, they have patients coming to their clinic in need of fertility treatments, but not able to afford them. So they thought that there might be something we could do. And they had this idea of creating a charity that would not only serve their patients, but would serve any patients from any clinics in Canada. And we met, and I have a background in executive leadership for charitable organizations, so that was a perfect fit. Personally, I was drawn to the mission because I had a bit of experience with infertility. Before having my son, my older kid, I had recurring miscarriages. And this was like completely surprising to me because first I didn't know it would exist. Like at the time, nobody spoke about recurring miscarriages. My OBGYN was like very cool about it and not really seeing the anxiety that it can bring to want to conceive and not being able to do so. Luckily enough, I didn't have to go through the entire process, fertility process to have my kids. It finally happened naturally. But when I spoke with Dr. Huma and Dr. Zineku, it drew me back to what I felt at the time, the helplessness, the difficulties, and knowing about the financial issues, I was even more like touched by it because, knowing what it is to go through infertility and on top of it, experiencing financial issues, it is devastating for many, many people. So that's how we started this foundation together. And yeah, we wanted people not to choose between financial stability and their dream of parenthood.
Wow.
I love how you talked about your journey, the miscarriages that you had. And I was actually I just came from a femtech roundtable where we in downtown Toronto, where a group of us just got together, and we had OBGYNs, we had femtech founders like myself, other founders, and also those within the insurance industry. We had people from Sun Life talking about insurance policies for that. And what you brought up was very interesting because we also talked about the financial barrier for women who are seeking IVF, seeking IUI, or the fact that why is it so expensive in Canada? Why it's not subsidized as much. And I think one of the founders brought up a very good point of it's been so the reimbursement that you can get from the government in Ontario, it's $8,000, and it's been $8,000 for the past 15 years. Why do we not why so the costs have spiked up in terms of fertility treatments, but why are we not seeing more reimbursement strategies and financial support for women? And I love organizations like Fertility Friends Foundation who are actually providing that support to women and to couples. And it's not just a women problem, it's like a couple problem. It's just women, it's both women and men going through that journey. And yeah, so I love what you're working on. And I've seen throughout my journey at FIBRA, I've had women coming to me talking about their experience when they are trying to conceive naturally, and then IVF, all the barriers that they feel, at which one of it is definitely financial.
Yeah, and you made a very good points because actually you went then to the roots of the problem. The root of the problem is that in Canada, still today, fertility treatments are considered as elective. It means that it's a disease. Like infertility is recognized as a disease by the World Health Organization, but it's not treated as such in Canada and in other countries as well. I don't want to point Canada specifically, they're not the only one. But when it comes to public coverage for fertility treatments, you see disparities between provinces, and even in provinces where you have the most coverage, it doesn't cover the needs at all. So let's stay a few minutes on this. Coverage in Canada is health is a provincial capacity. So it depends on the province, meaning that in some provinces, in terms of fertility treatments, you have one IVF cycle that is covered by the government. It's the case in Ontario, Quebec, soon in BC. They announced it in the beginning of the year, and they're going to roll it out in July. So one cycle of IVF. In other provinces, you have tax credits, you have a bit of support. Some provinces, you have nothing from the get-go. Like in Alberta, you have nothing. So you rely on you were mentioning at your roundtable having some Sun Life or other benefit providers. So you rely on that when you are employed by an employer that includes fertility benefits in their coverage. And that's the case in 50% of the case, because 50% of employers in Canada include fertility benefits in their coverage. 50% don't. It's growing, so it's a good movement. You see progress, so that's very encouraging. But it goes down to when you're an individual and you can work for yourself, you can be a consultant, you can be an auto-entrepreneur, you can be all of that. You have no coverage. And depending on where you live, coverage will be partial or non-existent. It's important also to know that most likely when you are going through fertility treatments for any reasons, you will need more than one IVF cycle to succeed. Basically, depends on the pathology, but 30% of people succeed in growing their family with one IVF cycle. It means that 70% will have to at least go through 2, 3, even more to do that. Imagine the financial pressure. And an IVF cycle, maybe we should have started with that, cost between $10,000 and $20,000. So, but the financial barrier is really one of the main ones when it comes to fertility treatments, for sure. Then you have specific communities that are more impacted than others regarding the cost of these treatments for different reasons. Let's take the 2S LGBTQ plus community. This community would most likely need financial treatments to grow their family. Same-sex couples, for instance, obviously they will need treatments. They are very much impacted by this cost. Or single mother by choice or not by choice, just because they haven't found the right partner to have a baby. Because they are not relying on a dual income, they are very much impacted by the cost of the treatments, and so on. So the question of the financial barrier is really at the center of everything we do, like and raising awareness also about it is very important to us.
And it's very interesting because one of the numbers that we talked about in that roundtable was that the average cost for successful pregnancy from IVF is $60,000 in Canada. So roughly 3 rounds, each costing $10,000 to $15,000. And when you add the element or the factor of where you live and living in rural areas of Ontario, Northern Ontario, and actually one of the founders brought up a good point that I think the most northern fertility clinic in Ontario is in Barrie. And that was mind-blowing because you have a whole other population living above Barrie in Northern Ontario, and they don't have access to fertility clinics. And that's just for Northern Ontario. When we go to territories, when we go to other provinces that are much northern than where Ontario is located, the access to fertility care, to access to healthcare, is another challenge or barrier. And oftentimes they have to do a lot of long commutes, which is added cost to the whole treatment, added pressure, mental pressure. And it's not just the cost of fertility treatments, but it's also the cost of, again, commuting to those clinics. But yeah, back to you.
No, you're completely right. It's really the 2 main barriers. It's geography and finance. And sometimes it goes together, exactly as you said. When you live in a remote part in Canada, you're not close to any fertility clinics. And believe me, it happens a lot to a lot of people. You add additional costs, like travel costs, staying also, because financial fertility treatments it's a lot of monitoring. You need to be there. You have multiple appointments very early in the morning to monitor where you are with your eggs, producing your eggs, etc. So, and then you have the egg retrieval, and then you wait a few days, and then maybe you have a transfer, a French transfer, maybe it's a frozen embryo transfer, but it's a lot of appointments. So people sometimes need to stay for a week, 2 weeks in a place. They need to rent an Airbnb or have a hotel stay. It adds up tremendously when you're not living in an area where you have easy access to fertility care.
Wow, that is like all of this has been so much to unpack, knowing that there's a geographical aspect and then also the financial aspect. And considering what Panyan said
If I
about
can add to that, sorry, that just reminded me of another conversation that we had within the
Mhm.
roundtable. And that was, I think, one of the most important things of like if women and couples knew and if they were more aware before when they were in their teenage years or early 20s or mid 20s, they would have taken maybe different actions in terms of saving that money or being aware or being cautious with their expenditures if they have a plan of getting pregnant. Because one of the things that we talked about was the lack of education and how taboo the topic of women's health in general is, but also the fact that a lot of women and couples, when they're going through this journey of trying to conceive and infertility, they don't often talk with each other, with their friends. They don't talk with other women. They don't talk with their friends or the group around them because they conceive that as a negative thing about themselves. So we have that layer, we have that lack of education, that topic being taboo, and specifically for fertility and when women are going through that, because again, when you're in your early 20s or mid 20s, if you have that thought at the back of your mind that getting pregnant is not as easy as might not be as easy as you thought it will be, um, it might change some of the decisions that you're making in terms of expenditures, in terms of how you track your health, what do you do about your health, your menstrual health, your cycle irregularities, and also the supplements that you even take. You try to be more proactive about that from the early days.
I definitely agree. Education is key. Definitely key. We are dreaming of a world when in high school, young girls and young boys are taught a lot more about reproductive health. In Canada, 1 in 6 couples will have to go through fertility treatments to grow their family. And it's growing for many reasons. Like the main reason is the age, the start age when people are thinking about growing their family. It's later and later in life for social reason also, and environmental issues that we cannot really pinpoint at the moment, but the prevalence of infertility is growing for many reasons. The fact that education is at the center of everything would definitely help a lot of people, as you said, figure out the cost of it early in advance, like having some tests, just seeing if is there a problem with me. You see more and more early diminished ovarian reserves. You see a lot of decrease in terms of sperm mobility and quality. All of that can be seen through tests. So we should definitely encourage people to go see a fertility doctor or a gynecologist early in time. And what you're doing with FIBRA is very important. You're bringing at the forefront, trying to, get more going in terms of communication around menstrual cycle, reproductive health. That is at the center of the solution. We need to talk more about it. We need to remove the stigma of it, of reproductive health for women and for men, because for women, periods, fertility, it's difficult to talk about because people can get embarrassed when we talk about that. It's the same for men. Like talking about sperm quality and mobility for men can be very difficult because it goes to their virility with their manhood in a way, which makes no sense, but that's how it's been perceived for the past few years. So I really commend what you're doing also with FIBRA, because it's very important to get information out there, to also provide tools that will help women track more data on their reproductive health.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it was very interesting that you brought up the point of high school education. And that was another point that we just talked about in the roundtable of how throughout your sex education classes in high school, you're always warned about trying to kind of like early pregnancies, or you're always told, be careful to not get pregnant, be careful to not get pregnant. So that kind of creates a wrong expectation. And in your mind, when you're growing up, when you're a teenager, when ultimately you carry that with you when you're adulthood, and you think that it's easy for you to get pregnant and it's going to be just as easy as that. And when you don't achieve pregnancy in the first month or so, then that also makes you question yourself, question kind of your health, and it adds a lot of pressure on you as well. But you don't know that it's completely normal. It's okay if you don't get pregnant in the first month or so. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 2 years of natural kind of conceiving efforts to get pregnant. And it was very interesting that you brought up the high school point, because I also think that we have to bring that education and talk about fertility journey and women's health to like earlier years, and not just talk about it when you're in your late 20s or early 30s or late 30s.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Panyan and Isabel. It's been, I feel like the session you attended today, Panyan, was just like made for the interview we're having right now, because there's so much information that, like you said, the expectations that you have growing up versus when you get into the point or phase in your life where you're ready. It's like two different, it's like night and day. So yeah, that's very true. And I was thinking, Isabel, like you had mentioned financial barriers a lot. And we're wondering like what is the most common financial barrier you feel like a lot of like couples or women who are trying to conceive face in this period based on all the people you've worked with in the past?
So you mean what kind of communities or what kind of financial barriers?
What's the most common financial barrier? So sometimes it could be that maybe some people have for just the first cycle or they don't have enough for even consultation. So I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
like at what point do people face the most financial barrier in the process?
That's a very good question, and it really depends on individuals. So some people have even trouble accessing fertility care, like even going to a clinic, paying out of pocket for an appointment is a real financial hassle and a real problem. I don't have data, but it would be very interesting to see the data of people who do not even go to a fertility clinic because they know that they won't be able to afford it. But I don't have that data, but I'm sure that it's going to be mind-blowing in terms of numbers. We personally give grants to people who either have been on their journey for a long time and need financial help to continue their journey after a few cycles of IVF.
Mm-hmm.
And in other provinces, like Alberta, when there's no coverage, we give grants to people for them to access fertility treatments. But they've already seen an endocrinologist or fertility doctors. That's one of the criteria for us. We need to have a planned treatment in order to be able to give grants. So it really depends on where you are in the journey. But that's a very good question. The more people spend, because they ask everyone and everybody to help them on this journey. So it's about friends and family. Sometimes they do, fundraiser online to also try to cover some of the expenses. And usually we really try to help these people out there.
Amazing. Amazing. So, I guess the follow-up question would be, since Fertility Friends Foundation helps women in like the financial, helping to alleviate the financial barriers that takes them from trying to conceive to the dream goal of, now having the baby. Can you maybe walk us through the process of how women could apply for such grants?
Of course, of course. So women and men can apply for our grants. We open our application platform twice a year. It's currently open in April. It's going to stay open from April 1st to April 30. Then we're going to open it again in the fall, so for the whole month of October. So during these two times, you can find a grant application on our website that you need to fill out. Then you send your doctor a medical evaluation, so they can confirm the planned treatment, and there is an application fee associated with the application of $50. Once you've submitted everything, that we have everything, we confirm, and then you will know 2 weeks after the close of the application platform whether or not you've been selected for further review. The first committee to gather is a medical committee. So we review medically what's going on with you, the medical needs, etc. If you're selected for further review, comes the financial review. So we have many financial information from the application form and we ask for additional ones. And then we have a grant assessment committee that actually takes into consideration the review of the medical and the finance committees and make the final decisions. So we are going to announce more grant recipients at the end of May or beginning of June. Last year, we gave 25 grants of $5,000 each. We hope to do more this year. It all depends on fundraising for us. So depending on the support that we get, we'll be able to help more people because the needs are there.
Yeah, surely they're growing by the day.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So now we have that information out there. I'm very sure that our community and your community as well will be very much looking forward to applying for the next round. So we'll definitely have this uploaded and then everyone can see what the information is that they need to get started with. So this is a very important job that you have, and it's also very sensitive. I was wondering, like, what's the most rewarding part of this journey for you when you walk patients through from start to finish, or the entirety of your job? It might not even have to be with the clients that you have, but what's the most rewarding part of the journey for you?
Without a doubt, is when we get good news from our grant recipients. So, and good news could be different. Like we could get an email from one of our grant recipients that maybe hasn't been successful, but is highlighting the fact that we gave them hope. And hope is at the center of everything because feeling helpless is the worst feeling in the world. So we are providing hope for people to achieve their dream of parenthood. And of course, when we get pregnancy announcements or we get pictures of the babies that were born thanks to our grants, it just warms our hearts beyond words. It's news that I share with our entire board of directors because it's a group of very committed people that are working tirelessly for this organization, and it's a group, it's just a common effort that we're all doing. So when we get good news from our grant recipients, it's what makes everything worth it.
That is so touching. It's so touching. I don't have the job that you have, but yeah, I guess that would be my most rewarding part of the job too. Yeah, that is very touching. And just to wrap this up, the final question is, as someone on the front lines of trying to create financial equity for people who are trying to conceive or like getting into the fertility access space, where do you see cycle tracking tools like Fibra playing a role in the broader ecosystem of care and support?
Well, I said it earlier. I think that we align because your role is really to help women track their reproductive health and menstrual cycles. And you're creating lots of education and awareness about that. And that's precious. And that's exactly what the community needs. That's exactly what women need. So I feel that's the way we align. That being said, the education is key to a lot of things, but the financial barrier is still there, and we still need, as a community, to gather around this mission of creating a more equal access to fertility care through various platforms, and we are one of them. So hopefully, people listening will understand the importance of creating more equity in fertility care in Canada.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Isabel.
Thank you.
This has been a very emotional and touching episode. We have both learned to, oh, we have, well, yeah, we've all learned a lot here. Panyan's talk as well her participation at the roundtable. That was also a lot of information that we are very happy that happened today and that we're able to share as well with the audience. And knowing that there's so much knowledge gap in what people know versus what actually exists is wide. And we're glad that you're filling in that gap and that Fibra is also trying to fill in the gap as much as we can. So kudos to you. And Parian, did you have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to thank Isabel for joining us today. It was wonderful having you and having kind of your perspective from the work you've done and trying the work you've done specifically in terms of breaking the barriers, financial barriers for women in Canada, couples in Canada to access the care that they need.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for
Thank
this
you so much for
opportunity.
joining us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, all right. Bye.
Bye.